Welcome to Abundant EM. We are glad you are here today. If we can all stand in the room, we're going to be reading the Word of God out loud. But let's have the title slide roll through right now. Today is our week. On week 4, God and money fight to be content and resist greed. So let's go to our main passages for today. We're going to read them out loud together. It's 3 slides. Okay? Ready? Remember, we're declaring the Word of God in faith and in truth, knowing that the Word of God spoken transforms lives. So ready? Begin. Yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And some people, craving money, have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. Those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. The more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. So what good is wealth except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers? Amen. This is where the Lord may be seated. All right, we have 2 main passages today, 1 Timothy and Ecclesiastes. I love Ecclesiastes. He's so intense. Okay, so we are on week 4 of our 6-week series about worshiping God with money. How do we worship Him with our finances? Now, the main premise, if we go to the next slide, the very, very main premise of these last 6 weeks, this has been the takeaway. You can worship money or you can worship God with your money. That choice is ours every single day. And last week, we hit that idea of discipleship. If you and I are disciples, true followers of Jesus, and we say yes to Him, then He will gently and kindly be working in every area of your life. Because it's not enough just to save you from sin. He's like, I saved you so you can live an abundant life. I didn't save you to live a life of scarcity as an orphan. I saved you to live an abundant life. And that means learning how to trust in Him and follow Him in every area. So whether it's school or work or relationships or fight, whatever, every single area is meant for God to touch and for God to move in our lives. So every single day, we have the choice. Am I going to choose to follow Him, or am I going to choose to follow what the world says? Am I going to choose to worship God with X, Y, Z, fill in the blank with anything in your life, or am I going to worship that thing itself? That's always a choice we have every single day. And so, last week we talked about we have that choice, right, to worship God or worship money. And how do we know we maybe worship money more than we'd like to admit? I talked about that passage. It says, you cannot serve 2 masters, right? So it will either love one and hate the other. And then we're like, okay, great, that sounds good. But how do I actually know? And what he goes into, Jesus says, do not worry about the everyday things. That's how you know if you are maybe entrapped by that more than you realize. So what I'm hoping, this is going to sound really awful, but what I'm hoping is that as you hear each week, your heart is a little bit like, oh, that's an area that I have to, I don't trust God in that basic need. Or I'm realizing I don't trust God in this thing. And here I am to tell you that's really good. Change only starts with awareness. You can only know about it to start changing towards it. And so if you're oh my gosh, in my life, I feel like just this giant mirror. You know those times 10 mirrors that I don't have one of those because I don't want to know what's in my, I kind of have big pores right here, okay? Zoom in. Those are your, okay. It is not pretty. And I don't want to know, what's 10 times in those pores, okay? But, you know what I'm talking about? You kind of have to, look and see to be able to, clean it up, you know? Same thing in your life. Your life is like a pore on my nose, all right? You got to know what's in there to start cleaning it out, okay? It's that is gross, but that's the truth. So if God is starting to touch your life, and you're this is getting uncomfortable, then I want to tell you, welcome to the club. You are in a good place. God is gentle and kind, and He always does these things for our good. And so in week 4, we're going beyond daily needs because we obviously need those daily needs. And God knows your daily needs. He knows about inflation, Okay, he knows about how the housing market in Denver sucks. Okay, like he knows about all the things. So he knows your basic needs. Okay, we can trust him with that. Now, week 4, we're going to beyond basic needs. We're going to the idea of wealth and riches, and not just money, but like having. Okay, and so we're focusing on the idea of contentment versus greed or coveting. We're hitting a really important point today. Okay, what does it mean to be content? Turn to your neighbor right now next to you and say, are you content with life? Ready? Begin. Ask your neighbor, are you content with life? Okay? I'm looking at you, bunch of liars. You're so content with life, really? Who said yes? Raise your hands high. You're content with life. Great. Who's like, what is the point of my life right now? Okay, you didn't have to raise your hand. But the point being, okay, what does it mean to be content? Jackson, what does it mean to be content? You raise your hand up so boldly. What does it mean to be content? I don't know. Like not having worries? Being at peace? Okay, that's a good point. You could have some worries because we're human and we live in this world, right? But still be content. That's a really good point, okay? So contentment is beyond just like what you think, right? Contentment is like a state of being to which you are at peace and satisfied, you know? Like maybe the boat is rocking, but you're just like, you're okay, you know? Being content is being at peace and being satisfied. Now, how many of you have ever, you know, like in Vegas, they have, or like whatever, they like have those like jackpot coin thingies, whatever? Okay. So, I don't know, I'm really bad at that kind of stuff, so I don't really do it because I can't. Have zero, like, I don't know, that kind of stuff. But anyway, I know somebody who, like, put a quarter in, you know, one of those machines. They just, like, pulled it for fun. And then it was like, ding, 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 ding. And they're like, ooh, the sound works. And so they kind of kept going. And they were kind of, like, getting a lot of luck. And they were doing really well. And there was a point where I forget. It was, like, it had gone up quite a bit from what they put in. And you know that moment where you're like, I could go one more time and lose it all, or I could go one more time and like double this. You know what I mean? And so like there's that moment of like, do I keep going or do I not? And I think the idea of being content is the idea of like, no matter what I have in front of me, I'm okay with what I have. I don't have to have more. Does that make sense? Like when it comes to money, the idea of being content is like, yeah, like sure, we could all live with more, but do I need it? No. Am I going to chase after it in my life? No. Am I going to lose sleep over it? No. Now, go to the next slide, our main verse for today. It talks about this. Being content is actually great wealth. Because the reality is, how many of you, when you came into this world, you had tons of money? Nobody. Okay, maybe if you're born into like a certain family, but like most of us, you don't come in with anything but your birthday suit. And you leave with nothing but your birthday suit too, you know? And like, they might dress you up makeup-wise, but like, we all know you did, okay? And so like, you don't leave or come with anything. And the idea being, if you have what you have to fulfill your needs, find contentment in that. Find contentment in what you already have. Now, how is it possible? Okay, how many of you guys let's have honest moment, okay? Open your phone and swipe over and look at your, what's that called, this thing? You know, the screen time, amount of time you spend on your apps. No one's gonna ask you your numbers, okay? But look at it. What do you spend the most time on? Okay? How many of you, your top 3 things are a social media app? Okay, all right, it's true, right? Most of us, one of our top things is a social media app. Okay, put your phones down. Don't go open it, okay? But the point being, most of us are on social media, right? Okay, what does social media do for you? It used to be actually like saying hi. Who remembers Facebook when you used to poke people? That was what you used to do, okay? A long time ago. But like it was supposed to be like a connecting thing. But now what's the main point of social media? What's the main point? Make money. Be an influencer, make money. The rest of us who aren't influencers, we look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, they're so pretty. Look at their house, or look at their this. My algorithm, I'm sure, is very different from yours. My algorithms tell me things about Costco, okay? So we have very different social media algorithms. But the point being, we look at these things all the time, and it tells us, you should want this. Your life isn't enough. You don't have enough of this. You're not good enough at this. Like, if you do this one thing or be like this person, you'll be so much more. In other words, how much, don't tell me, but how much time was on there? Today, it's only 1:32. So like the day has just begun for some of you guys, okay? And so like there is much more time left to accrue on your social media screen time. But the point being, like, what is this telling you all day? That you don't have enough. That's literally how it works. It's how the machine is built. And so we live in a culture where it's very hard to be content. Do you know what I mean? Do you know when I'm the most content? When I'm not on it at all, period. Like I'll go for like days with on it, not on it, and I'm like, I am so much mentally healthier and like more jung up here, you know? Like I really am. I can see a difference. It is very hard in our world to be content. And yet, here it's telling us the greatest thing, the greatest wealth in your life is to be content. Whether you have $1 or $1 million, $1 billion, like whatever you have, finding contentment in what you have and what God has given you is one of the greatest gifts you can ever experience. Now, how do we actually be content in this world? This verse is telling us, understand your life in light of eternity. When you die on your deathbed, if you're lucky enough to die on your deathbed, right? And not like a sudden death where you have no like option or to like think. But when you're dying one day, because you will, like, what will you be thinking? Will you be like, dang, I really wish I had done that job and made so much more money? Like, I don't think most people die that way. You know what I mean? Like, you're thinking about other things when it is the end of your life. Or when people have like near-death experiences and they like come back to life or whatever, like they're not thinking about these kinds of things. Life really gets put into perspective when your life is very like short, you know? Eternal perspective helps you live more contently. Eternity. Not right now, not getting lost in what's right now, but the bigger picture of eternity. If God has made me for eternity, to spend with him forever, will it matter what happened? Yeah. It matters because he cares for you and loves you. But all those worries you and I have, will they really matter at that point? Eternity helps us gain contentment. Second thing is gratitude. Gratitude in counting what you actually do have. Because most of us, if we're honest, when we're scrolling through, what are we thinking? We're thinking, I don't have it, like a glass half empty type of viewpoint, right? Like, I don't have this, I don't have that. My life is not moving along like everybody else's life is. Like, I don't have X, Y, Z. That's how we're thinking. But what's the opposite of glass half empty? Glass half full. When I understand and I actually look at what I have, and when I focus on, there are so many things in my life that I have. Let's play a game, okay? If you are breathing right now, put a finger up. Please, y'all, everyone should put a finger up, okay? Okay. If you are generally healthy, I mean like you are not dying hooked up to an IV right now at a hospital, put another finger up, okay? All right. If you are able-bodied, like you don't need to use a wheelchair or crutches or hearing aids or like whatever, put a third finger up. Okay? If you have a high school diploma, put your finger up. Y'all don't realize in our day and age what a privilege education is. It really is. Okay. If you have food on the table most days, okay? If you're not choosing to like, I don't know, intermittent fast, put another finger up. Okay? If you have a cell phone with service, put another finger up. That is also a privilege. You know how much it costs to have like a smartphone nowadays? This is a freaking like many digits worth that I carry around all the time. It's a privilege. Okay, but I don't know how many fingers you have up now. If you have at least one family member in your life that you know cares for you, put a finger up. Okay? If you have at least one friend in your life, put a finger up. Have you run out yet? Okay. If you are in college or you are working towards being in college or you have more schooling or more training, put another finger up. If you have a job that gives you a paycheck, even if it's not a lot, put another finger up. Have you run out of fingers yet? Okay. The point is, you and I have many more privileges than we realize, than we acknowledge in our lives. How many of you can drive or have a car or have drinking water? There's some internet in your house. There are so many things that I know sound basic that we all have. But the point being, when we live with the perspective of gratitude, of counting our blessings, of seeing the glass half full on purpose, that doesn't mean the things that we don't have go away, because we still have those needs. Okay? I'm not saying it goes away. But what I'm saying is, though, when you shift your perspective and live that way, it does change the way you look and think about the world. It does change the way you pray. Because now you're not just like, God, I need this Y, Z, which he understands and still hears us in that. But we're also saying, God, thank you that I can breathe. Thank you that I have the privilege of X, Y, Z. If you're middle class, that's a dying privilege nowadays. There's a lot of things that we have privilege about that we need to acknowledge. When you acknowledge your blessings and your privileges and your gratitude, it changes the way you live. You can have more contentment. Does that make sense? But it's a choice. So the next time you open up your phone to look at something, remind yourself of the privilege you have to even do that, of the privileges you have to live the life that you and I do. Now, bottom line, in this world, you have to fight to be content. There are very few people who live just contently. Those people probably have cut off a lot of access to the internet. But the point being, it is hard to be content. You have to fight for it. So how can we fight for it? Next passage, 1 Timothy 6:9-10. It says this, so being content, the opposite is this, but people who long to be rich. It is not saying people who are rich. It is not saying money or wealth or possessions are evil. What is it saying? The longing, the desire, that is your sole focus. To be rich will what? Fall into temptation, and they are trapped. You guys know the Venus flytrap? It's kind of ugly. It's really ugly. Yeah, it's like you're learning about it in science, okay? So the Venus flytrap, it's trying to trap what? Flying insects, okay? And it looks really alluring, right? The Venus flytrap has, the way it looks on the inside, it's like a trap, okay? It's a temptation, it's a lure. Once that insect hits, what happens? Gone. Yeah. Okay, actually, my son is smarter than me. It's the smell, okay, that draws whatever the insect's in, okay? Now, the point being, that is what it's like. It looks pretty, smells nice. You're like, ooh. But what it does is it's a temptation. It lures us. It traps us. It binds us. It holds us. Not the money itself, not being rich, not being wealthy, but the love of that, the desire for that, which in other words means you could have $1 to your name and still have this desire that drives you. You couldn't have $1 billion, whatever. Does it make sense? It's not what you have that makes you love it. It's your heart, right? It's how you love it. But that temptation, that trap, plunges them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money, not wealth itself, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. The love of it. Again, it is not the material thing that is condemned. It is the love and the desire for that. That is what is condemned here. What this leads to, this craving of money, what it leads to is that people wander from the true faith. That's because, again, remember last week, you cannot love two things truly and fully. You can only end up loving one. And so that's what he's saying here, is that if you choose to start going that direction of love for that, it will trap you in. Now, that is a warning to all of us against what? Greed and coveting. That's why they say fight to be content. Fight to be content. When I was living in California, in the church that I was serving at, one of the families that was a part of that church, they're the founders and owners of a really, really huge, across the nation, actually international, I won't share who they are because you'll know. But anyway, so their family founded and owned this huge business, basically. And they were the most interesting people I've ever met because they truly had a lot of money, truly, okay? And they lived in such a way that was so fascinating to me because you would not quite know that they had that kind of wealth. Does that make sense? They didn't live with a giant house or all these cars or any of these things. They always bought things used. I don't know if it's because they're Korean, so it's ingrained in them so hard that they're still, I don't know. But they just live such a fascinating way. But what they would tell us all the time is people think that when I have money, I'll do all these things. But they have been very strict to that principle of God has stewarded us, given us this money to steward. So I can't just use it however I want, even if I technically can. And people at their echelon of there's echelons, man, of living. The echelon of the place they live at is their peers in the field have jets, private jets. And they didn't. Because they were we could, but we don't. That's just not how God's called us to live. And I remember being really fascinated by that because that I was see, I don't have none of that, so I can't even desire it because I'm nowhere near that in my life. But to have that access and not live that way, that was fascinating to me. But the idea being we're always fighting to be content with what we do have. But when they fight for contentment, it's insane how God keeps releasing all these things into our lives. But they're every day it's a battle to stay content and not covet and not live out their greed, So the opposite of contentment is that greed. Is coveting. Coveting is looking at someone else and being I want what they have. Or, you know what's worse? I want to be that person instead of me. And so, let's look at Sam's favorite book in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, written by King Solomon, who is the wealthiest, wisest man in all of history, who had 1,000 women in his harem, 300 wives, 700 concubines, okay? The richest man in all of the world. And this is what he had to say at the end of his life. Vanity, vanity. It is all meaningless. Those who love money will never have enough. When you first made your first paycheck, or you're whoa, I've never seen those digits in my bank account. But after a while of working, you will realize you will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings you happiness. I love what it says right here, because the more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. How true is this? This is so true. So what good is wealth but to watch it slip through your fingers? Now, this is the principle. It's not about money here, because we all need it to live and to survive. It's about the love of money, the temptation to be drawn in by greed. The temptation to live a life that is consumed by worry and thoughts and coveting more than we actually need in our lives. How meaningless it is. In other words, we are all guilty of this. I have thought this many times throughout my life, where I'm man, if we just made this much more money, our lives would be so much easier. Okay, probably true, but really? No, because I know we're human. And if you have more, you spend more. You think you save more, but then the whole world ends, and then you're well, what's the point of that? Or whatever. The point being, it is meaningless to think that wealth is what brings us true contentment. Contentment is available to us through Jesus and the way he saved us and the life he invites us to live, not because of what we have. So, you can choose to worship God with your money, or you can choose to worship money. Another way to think about it is you can choose contentment and fight for it in your day, or you can just get swept up in the current of greed in our culture. That choice is yours every single day. That choice is yours every single day. I am not saying that it will magically solve your problems, but actually what I'm saying is you'll be surprised how the worries you have in your life shift when you choose contentment. When you choose contentment of like, I could buy 6 pairs of Costco leggings on sale. This is what's going through my head, you guys. Or I could be content with what I already have at home. And I'm going to choose contentment. Like, does that make sense? Like, okay, that's a really bad example because none of the rest of you guys. But the point being, I can choose to be content with what I have, or I can choose to live a life that is tired because I'm seeking after so many other things in my life. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. Now, I want you guys to pull out your phones. There's only 2 questions today. It's very easy. If we can go to the next slide. But I want you guys to keep a running track of what your thoughts are going on right now. So next slide. What thoughts are going on right now for you as we unfold this series. And this is the first thing, is I want you to write down a list of what you are grateful for in your life right now. Start basic. You can breathe. You have health. You have a family, whatever it may be. Start writing down everything. Think about if God took this away, how hard would your life be? Took away your breath right now, life would be hard, okay? Like there's a lot of things we take for granted. Write down a list of what you are grateful for and focus on what you do have. What you do have. Be intentional. This is one way we fight for contentment. Think of your daily life, the food on the table, the fact that you have access to coffee. Like whatever it may be, think about your everyday life, your job, the car that gets you to work, the fact that you can walk. Like there's so many pieces of this that we can be thankful for. And in that, we choose to fight for contentment. The last question is, how will you choose to fight for contentment this week? Because I guarantee you, because I literally spoke this message today, this week, something will come up in your life that will challenge and show you contentment and greed are real things in our everyday life. Something will happen. I pray gently and kindly, but something's going to happen that's going to show you that perhaps you and I live out greed more than we like to admit. And so when that happens this week, I want you to have already thought through, how will you fight for contentment? Look at that list again. Add to it. Speak it out. How will you choose to fight for contentment? Today's concept is really simple. In this world that we live in, we have to fight for contentment. And we have to resist greed. It is a part of our world. But without doing that, we could not understand what it looks like to truly be content apart from God. And so, if we can all stand, we're going to sing this song together. This is a song that we know well. And it's a song that I hope you will declare over your life this next week. That we want to have hearts filled with gratitude before God for all he has done for us, for all he will do in our lives. The fact that God is touching something in you regards to this concept, this message series about money. If you're feeling stressed about things, I'm thinking, man, God loves you so much that he is wanting you to see this, that he's wanting to touch this area of your life that maybe you've never let him touch before. God is a God of every part of your life, not just church, not just Sunday, not just salvation, but every part of your life. And so will you surrender? Will you say yes to him? Will you choose gratitude to be what anchors you? Let's worship together.